Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got some RPG horror stories for you all. As per usual, I'll be narrating the post, giving you my opinions at the end, and I hope you do the same down in the comments down below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Illegal Avocado, 2975. Character killed because I was going to be late to a game. Pretty much what the title said. It was game day, Saturday, and the game is held at a friend's house that's in a town an hour's drive away. I'm on the highway that would normally take me there. I say normally because very shortly after I get on the road, traffic comes to a dead stop. I pull out my phone to see if Waze can tell me where the jam up is and if it can tell me an alternative route. The jam looks to be about 8 miles long. It's a car accident, and yes, there's an alternative route that'll take me an hour and a half to get there. So I call my friend David and let him know that I'm going to be late and explain why, sending him some of the pics of the jam and where I am. I also explain how I'm going to have to route myself through a town that's north of where he lives and come down, and that it's going to be about 1.5 hours to get to him on top of however long it's going to take me to get out of the jam, since I'm nowhere near any of the turnoffs I can take to get back to the road that'll take me the other way. I also say, tell DM to start the game without me and run my tune if we hit combat until I get there. David says he'll do that, and I hang up and concentrate on not losing my mind being stuck in this buster cluck. I'm stuck in traffic for 40 minutes before I can get to my turn and start heading there. I text David that I'm clear of the jam and heading there now. I drive there, and I'm a little over 2 hours late to our usual 4-hour session. I knock on the door and my friend answers and lets me in. He has a look on his face that's concerning. The DM said, "You might as well not bothered coming. Your character is dead." I chuckled and said, "Damn, tough combat?" looking at my David. "You did remember the subclass abilities I had, right?" David said. "We're still RPing the start of the quest. We were doing town downtime stuff and the quest came to us. We are talking with the nobleman to get the details and discussing payment." I looked at the DM and said, "What, why am I dead?" "Because you were late. I'm tired of that shit, and so I decided to start punishing people who were late." What the fuck, really? Who's done that in this group? Carl's the only one who is late to a session that I know of, and he had a good reason since some jackass ran him off the road and into a ditch. I've never been late before, and this time, I was stuck in a fucking traffic jam. I pulled out my phone and pulled up Facebook. We have a guy in our area that listens to the police scanner and reports on what's happening on his Facebook page. I pulled up his report on the 5-car collision on the road I normally take, showed him the pics I sent David. "Didn't David tell you why I was going to be late?" DM said yes, but then went on about how this other game, Warhammer 40k, has a bunch of people who are late constantly, and he put a rule of dealing with late characters into place and how it's applying to all of his groups. Not that he ever showed us this rule, but 1 hour late and you're suffering a penalty. 2 hours late and your character dies and you're out for the rest of the game. If you show up on time the following session, your party may be allowed to get your character resurrected when they get to a temple in a major city, but the cost comes out of your gold reserves, or you can submit a new character 1 level below your party's level. I coldly say fine and leave. I'm not sure I'm going to this weekend session or not. I'm kinda leaning towards hitting the LFG boards in my area. A pickup game at the FLGS, and it's looking like it's the better option. Even if you had a problem player who is constantly late to sessions and you establish some kind of rule or punishment system or something, I don't think it is ever acceptable to kill someone's character when they are not at the table. That is a bullshit move that's done specifically to alienate and punish players for just random fucking reasons. Always have a conversation like a goddamn adult beforehand and try to actually solve the problems that are happening at the table before you punish someone and alienate them and possibly risk ruining friendships. It's just a bullshit thing to do. Under no circumstance can I think of a situation where it's okay just to kill someone's character when they're not at the table. Now, if you can think of one, please fucking enlighten me. But even if you did have the rules in place and this player was just constantly late and the table had rules where if you're always late, your character is just possibly at risk of getting killed because someone else will be playing your character. But in this circumstance, it is vastly different to take this kind of drastic action when A, the person was in an 8-mile traffic jam and had no control over the circumstance, B, this is a new rule applied and has no precedent whatsoever, and C, being late was never a problem with the specific D&D party in the first place. It was a randomly applied rule that was then harshly enforced when they had no control over the circumstances that made them late in the first place. This is the kind of behavior that ends up making a D&D group split apart, and it just alienates players, ends friendships, and is just honestly a dick fucking move to do. Honestly, I wouldn't return to the table. I would honestly possibly set up, host your own D&D session, maybe find a new session, see what players are willing to join you out and essentially leave that fucker behind, because if he's willing just to, on a fucking whim, kill off your character because you were late because of an 8-mile-long traffic jam with a 5-car pileup and you had no fucking control over, and he punished you for that? Who's to say he won't start taking his shit out on other players because they end up fumbling the ball in some way that's out of their control? Dude fucking talks to you like he's on a goddamn power trip. Like he's talking to you like you're an employee and not like an actual fucking person or a friend. That kind of behavior just should not be allowed to fly. Because in the end, you were committed enough to the campaign to wade through 2 hours worth of traffic, go on a long as fuck drive in order to get there, only to find out they killed your character and you went right back home because of their bullshit. That is commitment. The DM had no commitment to you as a player, at all. And the thing is, D&D's a two-way street. You gotta be committed to your players and your players gotta be committed to you. And if you can't give your players the kind of respect when shit goes wrong, you shouldn't be a DM. Because after all, it's a game, and you're supposed to have fun with the people you're playing with, and not pulling shit like this. Kylie Lady. DM demands I wear costumes and drink IRL potions and don't play male characters. This isn't that crazy, but here's my entry. So I live abroad in Taiwan, and a couple years ago I was trying to find a game to play in, as I had really had the itch to play. Because I hadn't since I had lived in the States. I posted on a foreigners group asking if anybody was interested in playing, and I got some interest from this guy who said him and his girlfriend were going to start a game up and it would be her first time. I was kind of excited about the idea that there would be another woman in the group because I had bad experiences abroad with all guy groups. He had pitched it to me as roleplay heavy and kind of relaxed because he didn't want to scare away his girlfriend. He said it would be chill, that unfortunately turned out not to be the case. The group chat is where it really all started to go bad. It wasn't anything insane, but the guy was just really incessant. I already hate group chats, and this guy was messaging at all hours of the night and getting kind of upset if we didn't message him back quickly. No big deal though. I know DMing is a lot of work and probably he was anxious to get stuff set up. We were going to play Lost Mines of Phandelver, which I thought would be good because it's an opener module and he said his girlfriend was new. After a while of setting up the game, he started to lay out some of the rules that were definitely not chill. For example, one of the things he said was that we needed to all be in costume because his girlfriend really liked the idea of dressing up, but didn't want to feel like the odd one out. Now, I fucking love doing weird bits with costumes. It's actually one of my favorite things, but I just got a bad vibe that he told us that we had to, because I also can't guarantee that I'm going to have a costume every single time, considering I was going to have to ride public transport to get there. He also was going to make potions, and whenever we drink a potion or any consumable, we were actually going to have to drink his alcoholic drinks that he would put in these potion bottles. Again, a really cool idea and concept if it comes up organically, but I just find it weird that it's like, no, you have to drink my vodka shots every time you want healing or any other potion. The final thing that really got me was that I had created a male character and my husband had created a female character, because why not? He all of a sudden started asking lots of questions about us and making sure this wasn't some kind of kink thing, which it absolutely was not. I just wanted to play a male character and I thought it was weird that that was the first thing he jumped to. On top of this, he kept interrogating me and telling me that he didn't think that I, as a woman, could do a convincing male voice and that it would probably break immersion for his girlfriend. He kept underlining and bolding the fact that this was roleplay heavy and that he expected me to roleplay with a voice and he demanded voice notes where I did male voices. I just kind of ignored this because I know I can do it, and this isn't a job. I assured him I've been role-playing for a long time, and I was in theater, and he shouldn't worried. I will bring the roleplay. He just really wouldn't give up on this point, and I was not going to do this, so I just kind of stopped responding after a bit. That's when he went absolutely nuclear, sending like 30 messages about how he'd spent like 1,300 USD on sets and costume pieces and modular train, and I was like, well, I didn't ask for all that. Not my problem. Anyway, I blocked him and decided to start my own campaign as a first-time DM. Been going on almost 2 years now, and it was the best decision I've ever made. So, happy ending all in all. Now, me personally, I do like roleplay heavy D&D sessions, but this is just excessive, and if I'm gonna be honest and putting on my tinfoil hat here, I definitely think that the DM that OP was dealing with was using his girlfriend as a scapegoat for him wanting all the girls to dress up in costumes, and, you know, he can't be turned on by a girl trying to do a male voice, so she has to do a female character, obviously. And, you know, she's gotta dress the part, and if she's dressing as a male, he can't get his rocks after that. It's gotta be a female character, obviously. It really comes off that he was just using his girlfriend as a scapegoat for a reason to just, you know, enforce the roleplay heavy rules and costumes and all that kind of stuff. And not to mention the addition of the potion stuff, getting alcohol involved in D&D is fine, but forcing it that's just a bit much. And like, I also want to point out the fact that he's forcing them to drink drinks, he wants them to dress in cosplay, he wants them to play as a female character, you don't know what's in the drinks, OP has to take public transport to get there, they're a foreigner in a foreign country. There's like just so many potential red flags and for things to go horribly fucking wrong. It feels like the intro plot for one of the Taken sequels, alright? I'm just gonna say it. It's like, that has a lot of things that could go wrong, and the guy is definitely not coming off as the most, you know, trustworthy DM that you could find. But a lot of that is just kind of a tinfoil hat theory, as well as just a hunch that I have. And again, just want to state, there's nothing wrong with, like, doing roleplay and wearing costumes and having drinks and whatnot, but the thing is everyone has to be on board with it. If they're not, then you're starting to kind of just enforce some weird shit onto people. Also, the fact that his first thought was to jump to a kink thing definitely shows where his mind is at, not gonna lie. Starman80. D&D player freaks out at DM for running an anime-themed game. This happened before we started the game in earnest. I had been lurking in this D&D Discord server for a couple months. In between games, people would share memes, art, talk about the game, etc. One of the forever DMs in the server decided to boot up a new game, so he began recruiting players, and then got to make a channel. About 2 weeks later, we had our session 0. The premise was a chaotic world with multiple continents with different themes, like lava, ice, shadow, desert, fae, tropical beach, rainforest, etc. We started out in a rainforest city ruled by a shogunate under attack from a vampire emperor that looked sorta like Sephiroth from Final Fantasy. DM also explained all the homebrew races he had for us, mostly from anime or mythology, especially Japanese mythology. He also homebrewed 3 classes along with the traditional ones. There was a Demon Hunter class, a Dark Summoner class, and a Vampire Legion class. DM then showed us some of the concept art he drew up for the world, and it had an unmistakable anime theme. It was sort of giving One Piece with some Final Fantasy vibes mixed in too. DM explained this to us as we begun creating our characters based on the forms the DM gave to us to help us make sense of some of the homebrew. I remember making this Kitsune barbarian who was adopted into a dragonborn clan from the lava continent. As I was building my character, one of the players, I'll call him Jack, who had not said a word all session, piped up and said, "Wow, a lot of weird anime stuff in this campaign." DM just said, "Yep, that's what I was going for," and then kept on as he began to explain the gods, spirits, religions, and philosophies of the world and their buffs so we could pick one. But then Jack interrupted and said, "I thought this was D&D. DM said, "No worries, it's still more or less 5e rules." And Jack said, yeah, right, 5e rules with kitsune, demon hunters, and Japanese clans and shit. What next? Are we gonna have a lolicon race? Another player just kind of chuckled and said, what the fuck? And the DM said, okay, so clearly you have no idea what anime is. If you don't like the theme, you can play another campaign. And he said, why are you getting so defensive? Ha! Typical Discord mod who probably has terabytes of little anime girls you swear are 10,000 years old. That's probably why you included the vampires too. A fairly high chance you're an ironic fascist too. Then the DM just banned him from the channel. DM was quiet for a second, so another player said, ignore that jackass, I like your campaign idea. I then agreed and said, yeah, never thought I'd be able to say I played as a kitsune barbarian with a dragonborn stepdad. DM chuckled and then made a joke about how crazy the dragonborn are in this campaign. He then continued on and we started our Session 0 exploration. The campaign is still ongoing and we're having a blast. So I think some people don't fully grasp that D&D has kind of become the colloquial term for just 5th edition rules. At least in my circle it has. I mean, while you do have the main D&D lore books and the main D&D adventures and settings and campaign books and all that, D&D is also just kind of slowly evolved to become 5th edition rules applied to someone's homebrew setting. That's not always the case by any means. In fact, I'm probably in the majority here with that. That's just become what it has been in at least my close circles, but I assume that's pretty common to, quite a few others as well. And the reason why I say this is because the person that OP was dealing with was probably expecting this to be a fairly traditional D&D campaign and wasn't expecting all the additions to be slapped on top of it, which, to be fair, it does sound like the DM that OP has is fairly passionate about his projects, and honestly, it's awesome. Some people may not be down for an anime-type setting, but hell, some people might honestly just really vibe with it and really enjoy it, and that's the fun of D&D, is if you can think it, and you can figure out how to do it, you can do it. One of D&D's strong suits is it relies on the theater of the mind, which makes it all that more fun. But if I were to also throw in some tinfoil hat 2 cents here, I'd probably say that the reason why the guy that they were dealing with was so just fucking off the rails is there was probably quite a bit of projection in there. Because the people the guy was talking about are certainly a vast minority of people who consume anime content. Granted, a lot of the stuff that he was also bringing up is definitely prominent within meme culture as well, so perhaps he was just parroting that, but the direction that he started to go, at least according to OP, if their, storytelling is to be believed here, it makes me feel like they're probably just projecting, and maybe they're the one with terabytes of little anime girls. But again, that's just a tinfoil hat 2 cent theory. Cherry bomb boom boom. DM kicks me out of the group because I looked up a spell. Okay, so this happened about 6 months or so ago, and I am not asking for solutions, but just sort of a feedback sort of thing, because I feel like I'm in the right here. So, I'm in a campaign with about 6 people total, counting the DM, and it's going well. Ish. The DM, we'll call her Sally, is a very roleplay heavy DM. I don't have a problem with it, it just becomes tiring when she takes control of your player and does the actions for you. It doesn't happen normally, but maybe every other session. But she is very prone to kicking people out. For instance, one of the younger players in our group, who is still time managed by her parents, was kicked out because she was picked up earlier than the end time. I obviously don't agree with this, but not enough to protest. After around 4 to 6 months of playing in the campaign, I'm enjoying the storytelling overall, and do want to stay in the group. Sally and I were friends outside the campaign, and she, out of the blue one day, sends me this whole chain of texts saying she's going to off herself. I comfort her to the best of my abilities and life goes on. One particular session, our party is on a boat heading for a large city when a large kraken thing is attacking us. One of the mentor/guide NPCs uses a spell that I don't know whilst in combat. Disintegrate. So while another player is thinking about what he'll do on his turn, I look it up in the player handbook. I see that it does 40d6 damage, which is fucking insane, by the way. I show it to my friend sitting next to me, and he's just as surprised as I am. Sally sees this, asks what it is, so I show her, and she goes off on me. She tells me I'm not allowed to do that during combat because I could, quote, use counterspell on it. I have 2 points to this, them being, 1, that NPC is our teammate, why would I cast Counterspell on it? And 2, if we assume that I did want to cast Counterspell for some reason, I would probably cast it already because of a name like Disintegrate. I am then kicked out of the group, and I'm not even mad. I just don't understand why. So I ask, and she gives me a speech on how it's super disrespectful, but I just don't see how it is. Can anyone help? Edit, Sally has BPD and had a 3 strikes you're out type rule, except in my case, for whatever reason, completely bypassing strike 2 and going to 3. Asking about it later, I found out that I had a 2nd strike already for something I didn't even do. I think she also has control issues. If this is something that is from BPD, please tell me. I'm not friends at all with her anymore, and not being friends with her let me see how manipulative she was. Sally and I had an argument about a week or so before the session, so that might have something to do with it. Okay, that final comment pretty much 100% answered a pet theory of mine that I had while reading this, and that was that Sally had some kind of gripe or was upset with you and looking for any kind of reason possible to just remove you from the group in that instance. And in this case, it was something as trivial as looking up a spell, which, by the way, is pretty common to do. Like right now, because I didn't think Disintegrate was a 40d6 type spell, which is, by the way, like a fucking insane concept because that means you're rolling 40d6s and adding them all together to determine the damage. What it actually is a 10d6 plus 40 force damage, so probably just a typo or a misreading on the OP's part. Not a huge deal. That's also why we look spells up, is for this exact reason. But, yeah. There's nothing wrong with looking up a spell in the middle of a game. That's very common. Whether it's you forget your own spell, or you hear something that you're curious about, or you think someone might be misusing a spell, because it's very common. This is a very large and in-depth game with lots of handbooks and additions and other modules that all culminate together to one final product, and it's because we have this much stuff just all together that it's not unreasonable to look up a spell. I mean, hell, there's anything from looking up spells, you have little data cards and little data sheets, you have your character sheet where you can write spells down. There is no shame in looking up a spell, so I definitely think that OP's DM was just looking for any kind of reason they possibly could to get rid of them, and as they stated, it might be a part of their control issue. They didn't like the questioning nature of it, even if it was just to figure out what was just done, and use that as a reason to get rid of them. That's at least my assumption and what my feel on it is. That being said, what's the dumbest reason that you've been removed from a D&D party? Werebadger. Player thinks he can solve racism with a shopping montage. This was in a homebrew 5e campaign, pitched as serious and roleplay heavy, within a common friend group of people in their mid to late 20s. The DM told us ahead of character creation that, for lore reasons, certain races would potentially face racism in the setting, and recommended we only create a character of those races if we were up for roleplaying that. In particular, he told us orcs and half-orcs would face extreme racism. One player, a white man like most of the group, made a half-orc named Throwbar, choosing the race mostly because he wanted the racial traits for a specific character build. The game starts, and a few sessions in, the party encounters a group of soldiers on the road. The soldiers become immediately suspicious of the party because we're traveling with a half-orc, and make a few racist comments. Throwbar is shocked, as if he's never encountered bigotry before in his life. He tries to argue with the captain out of being racist, but only succeeds in aggravating him more. The captain demands the party hand over their weapons and makes it clear that there will be a fight if we don't. Before we can even discuss the situation, Throwbar decides, well, I guess I'll attack him, forcing us all into combat that our level 3 characters probably can't win. It would have been a total party kill, except the DM was merciful and had the soldiers incapacitate and arrest us instead of killing. Once we managed to get out of trouble, Throwbar, like the rest of us, wanted to make sure something like that didn't happen again. His solution? In the next town, we went shopping for new clothes to make him look less threatening. The entire party sat for about an hour while he picked out a salmon polo shirt and commissioned a pair of purely aesthetic glasses, thinking that the outfit would somehow make people less racist. The rest of us were making jokes about how dumb the idea was, but it didn't stop him. He really thought he could model minority his way out of racism. The next time Throwbar encountered discrimination, he reminded the DM about his new outfit and asked if it made a difference. The DM simply said no and kept going. This same player managed to tank 2 different campaigns that I ran as a DM, and now a good portion of the friend group refuses to play with him at all. But those are different stories. Also, edit for clarification, people seem to be getting the idea that this campaign was just about racism. I didn't talk about the other things that happened in the campaign because why would I include stuff that's not relevant to the story? Most characters we met didn't even mention his race, and the ones that were racist did not prevent him from doing anything plot crucial. It just made some things more difficult, exactly like he was warned ahead of time. Also, just as kind of a general note, racism is pretty common in a D&D setting because it's all about the world building. Racism exists in our world, and there would be a good chance that for a world of various different species of humanoids, there would most certainly be some forms of racism in that reality. Not every DM will have racism as part of their setting, but it is not necessarily uncommon for there to be racism in settings. The other part too is fantasy racism is supposed to be bad. It's not supposed to be cool or based, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. And of course, like with most things in D&D, it is something the party needs to have a discussion about in session 0, as is what happened here. The goofiest part of this is that someone thought that by wearing a salmon pink polo with some aesthetic glasses would suddenly remove a lot of, fantasy characters' racial prejudice. Like, I personally can hardly fathom the idea that a member of the KKK would give a minority group a pass because he's wearing a very well-tailored salmon polo. And, I don't think you would catch them dead saying something like, "Alright fellas, this one's one of the good ones." Like Buddy thought he could pretty woman his way out of racism. Buddy, it's not how that works. But what I will say is that it is pretty on par though for someone to put on a salmon pink polo with some, custom-made shades on a half-orc in order to combat racism. That is very much a kindergarten-style idea that would come out of your average D&D party. Although I am a little bit curious, for those of you who do frequently play D&D, how often do you guys implement, fantasy racism into your settings? And if you do, what's the goofiest way that you've seen them go about it? Come on, y'all. Player gets violent at some bad news. So I'm playing a homebrewed RPG with very simple rules, which doesn't really matter for the purpose of the story. The monsters are stereotypical D&D monsters for the most part. Only one player, because no one else is available. Anyways, characters traveled to a coastal city to consult the church about destroying a cursed candlestick, which she found in a dungeon under a swamp near her home village. The nun and monk are organizing a ship to sail out to a nearby volcanic island and throw it in. And that's going to take a few days, probably. They suggest character goes and has a look around the city, gardens, statues, shops, etc. Character has no cash left. So shops are of very little interest, but gardens are nice. While wandering around on the second day, her exploration of the city is interrupted by screams and fleeing townsfolk. She investigates and fights some ratmen. During the fight, she gets bitten. Once the ratmen are killed, some city guards show up. "Thanks," one says. "Bloody ratmen. By the way, did you get bitten?" "Yes." "Oh dear," the guard says. "You're going to turn into a rat woman. First, fine hairs will grow on your face and hands. You'll start to grow a tail, and you'll feel a strong compulsion to devour cheese, and your nose will get all pointy." The player, i.e. not the character, screams at me, stomps out of the room, into the lounge, puts on a blanket over her head, and just screams. No words. I try to talk to her, but she's not listening. I manage to get some words in edgewise, eventually. "Listen," I say grumpily, "2 things. First, even if they were telling the truth, you know I wouldn't do that to you. The priests would use their healing magic or something. Secondly, the first guard starts laughing, and the second one can't keep a straight face either, and they admit that they were trolling you." Still angry, she grabs a lap tray and tries to attack me with it, until I tell her to stop or I'll never play with her again. Fucking 7-year-olds, man. Good God. This one was just too precious not to share with you all, because at first I was like, wow, this is really fucked up. What is going on? Oh, it's a 7-year-old. And I just absolutely love the idea of a father just dragging his daughter into a D&D session for Just the two of them. It's incredibly charming and puts a smile on my face. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by Gamersups. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend Gamersups enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.